Greeting. Now, in the capacity as a human being, as a fellow truth seeker, as a YouTube community member, I'm taking it upon myself to expose a certain predatory dynamic with the spiritual community. And I've noticed this dynamic over and over again with people who are sharing spiritual knowledge, who are sharing testimony. And ultimately what happens when they have set out as their motive, as their intention to ultimately make money, to try to make a living from this algorithm, there's a dynamic that becomes established. Now, let me say this from the onset, and I'm totally just going off the cuff here. Yes, a person who creates content, interacts with people through either live chats or comment sections, they are using their energy. They're investing their energy, their time, what have you. And that creates an energy bond. The more that you go into that, the more energy that's expended on both parts. But there are a lot of people, there are a lot of isolated people who still seek community. And the internet and technology and their things of that nature provide to communicate, even though it is a, many times removed from actual person to person, it is still a form of interaction. So there is a type of service that's being provided in that a person is giving their time, of their attention, their energy to interact with people. And the more that they have a larger community, so on and so forth, more energy that's expended. So in that capacity, you could say that, yes, it's money, and asking for money is justified, if you will. However, there's a line that is crossed there when it from the outset, when a person has stated or their actions are the intent to make money, to try to make a living off of an image or perceived knowledge, that crosses a line in my estimation. Now, for one thing, from day one, I have never given any money to anybody for spiritual knowledge. I've seen people, and those who are engaged in that it's a whole nother level. They get into ego battles, they get into fighting, they get into all this stuff. And it happened when I learned this dynamic when I made a video about Ismail Perez and Danan. And that video blew up, 2 videos I made. And the comment section was crazy because it was an immediate attack from people that were inside of that camp, or that they were of Ismail Perez or Elena Danan. It became infighting, and it was all these accusations. And ultimately it was about money. Like someone was providing fake readings or fake channelings or whatever and charging for it. And so to get back to this dynamic though, what happens is, and this is taking place with this ego guru who is also Shiva Kailash, Shambho, and Dr. Rob. What happens is, I've witnessed this over and over again in other operations. They build up enough of a little core group that when they have their live chats or they have their video presentations, they have people and they are grooming individuals. This is a type of criminal grooming, and that's what I'm ultimately getting at, what I've seen taking place. And so what happens is there are people who desire community. There are action or, some sort of validation, if you will. Now, and I'm talking about Ismail Perez and Elena Danan. It's because I started getting into this. It was just because this was a burning desire once I had my awakening to share. It was part of whatever whatever comes about with when you come online, when your divinity comes online, you are compelled almost to share this information, this knowledge, but you're still walking your spiritual path. You're still very cognizant of how you interact with the world. And so at that point, I still am very source connected. Like, it's not arrogant to say I do not need anybody or anything except for maybe my little dog. But when you're connected to source, that is your guidance. They're in this. Literally, all you need to know, and this depends on your stage, but literally any problem in your life can be solved through breathing, through pranayama, and specifically asymmetrical breathing, where you're activating your vagus nerve. And anybody who tells you anything beyond that and tries to make money off of it, that's crossing a line, in my opinion, my view. So I'm making this video to expose a fledgling sort of community and a dynamic for whatever reason. If it helps one person, then so be it. But the dynamic is they kind of collect a core group of people around themselves. And so the brief, and I've interacted with this Shiva Kailash pretty much from day one since he began. But the last time I was in one of his live chats, and he had he had his little community of people within the chat. I'm going to tell you, because I was there on a mission, and I was putting in information in the chat in furtherance of that mission. I was not there to be chummy or to be part of the community. And so whenever, I guess, Shiva Kailash, this individual who we're looking at here, who has another channel called The Ego Guru, I began making my statements, and Shiva Kailash, the Ego Guru, got up off his ass and got onto the keyboard and said, "Oh, hello, Om," referring to me, Om Banda, or the channel. That's not me. My name is Mark. Om Banda is the name of the channel. So, but anyway, but okay, I was aware of that he got off his ass to recognize me in the chat, which is a type of ego gratification for one who's looking for that. But I was there to spread knowledge, to put knowledge into what I saw that was taking place. And so what happened was I didn't even say anything back to him. I didn't say, "Oh, hello, how are you?" And but what happened was about 3 or 4 of the people within the chat started going, "Oh yeah, he said hello to you," because in case I missed it, but these were his criminal grooming enterprise, his cronies, if you will, his fellow gang members. And so what happens is when these communities come online and they start getting more popular and more people involved, they have a little core group who works. They prey upon the lonely people. They prey upon people looking for recognition, and they start building their egos. They start giving them attention. And it all ultimately works towards you giving donations, because then you see someone else give a donation, see a person give a donation. And then they get attention. They get attention. People get more involved in the chat. And this is how this online grooming movement works. And but other than that channel, he also has another channel. Let me find that. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. But I just think it's interesting, this dynamic that takes place. And for me, myself, and I, for what I perceive as my mission, I've never deviated from just sharing knowledge or testimony, rather, because I might not have a lot of testimony. I mean, particular knowledge of expertise, but I do have sincerity and veracity about how your life can be changed through spiritual technologies. And so, but along the way, I've realized that, how this community with the purpose of monetizing and making money, how the dynamic operates, it's something I don't want any part of. Okay. Because it does involve your time. It does involve this type of disingenuousness of playing people, of playing their energies, their egos, in ultimately with that as your goal. You're not really interested in their lives. You're just interested in them giving you money or sending you donations through whatever. And it's endless. And, you know, I don't have time for that. So I'm not saying that ultimately that people who go that path and who are genuine content creators and investing their time and creating this type of quality content, you know, it's ultimately it exists for a reason, the monetization. But there are people out there who are adopting certain images with the sole purpose to separate people from their money and not provide them anything realistic or actionable in return. So if anything, hopefully this is, you know, will just be a community announcement, and it will continue to go as I kind of get more into this as it develops. But I'm basically guided to do things, and I've seen this dynamic take place in many communities over and over again. And it really, at the end of the day, it takes away from what people are trying to do. This is a great technology for someone to just get on and start recording themselves and share knowledge, but it takes on a whole nother aspect when it becomes money driven, or that is the focus. It's no longer a sincere human trying to share knowledge and energy with another human or groups of human, depending on your audience reach or what have you. But it's just unfortunate that these individuals exist. And, you know, ultimately that's their choice and their path. And everyone has their choice and their path. And I'm making it my choice and my path to identify criminal grooming behavior, criminal grooming movements, criminal organizations, which I believe Dr. Rob and Shiva Kailash Shambho, which is not his name, these are all titles he's co-opted, and the ego guru have all co-opted this image for nefarious purposes. So be aware, folks. Stay frosty, stay alert, and stay alive. Stay alive in the spirit.